Well, a warm good morning to you. Thank you for being a part of FEUER 2020. It's been a tremendous week together so far. It feels like two, but what a blessing. Well, this morning we've got a great program ahead of us. But as with yesterday and as our plans for tomorrow, we just these first few moments want to start in prayer together. And we've got Lilia in Sarajevo and Thomas in Prague, who are going to lead us in prayer in a moment. Wasn't it encouraging yesterday to be reminded of Psalm 126? Earlier on in that psalm, it speaks of the people who've been redeemed, who've been rescued, who had no future. But then their testimony is this. It's beautiful in verse 2. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Then it was said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy. Well, let's just share a song together. It's a song we often sing if we're meeting in a city or another in Europe, and it's a song that is a prayer that God would shape our hearts, change our hearts, that he would be the potter and we the clay. Change my heart, oh God, make it ever true. Change my heart, oh God, may I be like you. Change my heart, oh God, make it ever true. Change my heart, oh God, may I be like you.
Hvala ti, Gospode Bože, za ovo novo jutro, Gospode, za još jedan dan ljubavi i milosti Tvoje, Gospode. Hvala ti, Bože, za ovu privilegiju, kao braća i sestre, možemo doći okupljeni oko toga imena iz različitih država, gradova, zemalja i slaviti Tebe, Gospode. Bože, želimo da ti dajemo slavu, slavu, jer si ti jedini, Hriste, dostojan. I Bože, ja te molim da ti danas blagosloviš govornike, da blagosloviš i otvoriš naše srca, naše umove, da primimo ono što si ti pripremio za nas, Gospode. I Bože, molim te da ne budemo samo nijemi slušači, nego da budemo izvršioci tvoje riječi, Gospode, da idemo, da sijemo, da dijelimo tvoju riječ, da dijelimo tebe, Hriste, sa onima koji te ne znaju. Neka je proslavljeno ime tvoje danas zauvijek. In Jesus' name I pray.
You are the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me, this is what I pray. Change my heart, oh God, make it ever true. Change my heart, oh God, may I be like you.
Lord, thank you so much for all the multitudes of blessings that we have. Thank you for Jesus and for forgiveness of sins that we have, for the status of righteousness. Thank you that you adopted us as sons and daughters. Thank you that we can understand after many centuries, we can now understand the mystery of the gospel. Thank you, Lord, for the inheritance we have in heaven, for the Holy Spirit, and for the new calling that we can share as your church. Lord, and thank you for the strange gift of pandemic, and thank you, we pray that we can look ahead for revival. We pray for that. And we pray for today, Lord, that you will amaze us again with the wonder and beauty of the gospel, and that how wonderful it is that you, Jesus, are the Lord. help us to better proclaim it as a result. We pray for Sam today. We pray for Ajit, Fernando, and others involved. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Amen.
You are the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me, this is what I pray. Change my heart, oh God, make it ever true. Change my heart, oh God, may I be like you. Lord, we just thank you that we can be sharing this morning together. We thank you that we're tuning in from across the world, different time zones. Lord Jesus, we thank you that you are the Lord in each of these places. You are the name above all names. You are the King of Kings. Lord Jesus, thank you that you are the one who is God, who has come here and who's died on that cross to bring us forgiveness and life in all its fullness. Lord Jesus, thank you that you've risen from the dead, that you've shown yourself to be alive, that you've ascended to the highest place. You've poured out your spirit on all who call on your name, and that you are poised to return, the glorious King. And we ask that as we share this morning in all of these different countries, these places where you have strategically put each of us, that you would be working in our hearts, that you'd be changing us, shaping us, lifting our heads, giving us the vision you want us to have, to be your witnesses. So Lord, lead us now, we pray, and we worship you together. And we pray in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen. Welcome if you've just joined in, if you've just tuned in. Here's Michael, who's leading our session this morning. Thank you so much for being here today. Michael.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks so much for leading us. Isn't it great to be able to be together?
It is tremendous.
I know that it feels frustrating being separated by distance. We long to be together, and yet it's wonderful that in this way we're still connected through the gospel and sometimes a rather ropey internet connection. But the gospel is much stronger than any internet connection, and we're glad that we can be together in this way. Thanks so much for starting us off.
Thank you, Michael.
We've got an exciting morning together, or an afternoon together, or an evening together, depending on where you are around the world. But it's great that you're able to join us as we meet together for this second full morning of FEUER. We're going to be hearing another sample evangelistic talk this morning from Glenn Scrivener. Later on, we're going to be hearing from Sam Chan. Both of them come from Australia, which may sound strange for an evangelist network based in Europe. But we figured that if Eurovision has Australia in it, then we can have Australia as part of the European Evangelist Network. So we've got two Aussies this morning. We're also going to hear reports, hopefully from Serbia this morning, and also some exciting news from what they're doing in Israel. There's also going to be an opportunity to ask questions through the morning. So if you are looking on the internet sites, just go below to where it says Slido, and you can put your questions in there, and you can see what other people are saying. You can vote their questions up if you think they're good, and you can interact in that way. But it is great to have you with us. This morning's sample evangelistic talk is going to come from Glenn Scrivener. So I'm going to invite Glenn to join us now, and we'll just ask him a couple of questions. Good morning, Glenn.
Hello, Michael. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. It's a crisp autumn morning in Eastbourne on the south coast of England.
Great. So you're about 40 miles south of where we are now, and it's a crisp morning here as well. Great. So Glenn, tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
I am Emma's husband. I'm Ruby and JJ's dad. I'm an evangelist working for a ministry called Speak Life, and we're based here in England, but we beam all around the world using YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and trying to make a noise for Jesus wherever we are.
And what are some of the things that you kind of produce? Because you do a lot of stuff online. A lot of us have been learning how to do online for the first time, but you actually were doing loads of stuff online before this pandemic hit.
Right. And since pandemic, people are almost twice as much online as they were before it. And so this kind of ministry is ever more useful, I think. And so, yeah, we've got all sorts of outreaches. You can go to youtube.com/Speak Life Media. That's our channel. And yeah, we get into interviews with people. We talk about issues in the day. We talk about looking through gospel lenses at the news. But we also do things like we've got a Christmas animation coming out, 3D animation. It's eye-popping. It's going to knock your socks off. It's amazing, called Let Me Go There. You can check that out at letmegothere.info.
Great, fantastic. Loads of great stuff. Definitely worth checking out all of those resources. They're stuff that you can use and share, but it'll probably spark off lots of ideas of your own that you could create in whatever country you're in. Glenn's going to speak to us now. This is another sample evangelistic talk. So this is as if he was speaking to us as if we were non-Christians in a university context. And as we said yesterday, one of the best ways to learn how to give evangelistic talks is to watch other evangelists. And we had that session looking at what marks we want to look for in an evangelistic talk. So as we go through, be thinking about how Glenn is connecting, both identifying with the audience, how he's seeking to persuade us, and how he's inviting us to respond to what is being heard. And as he goes through, be sure to be writing in your questions. And then after a short break, after Glenn has finished, we'll be asking Glenn some of those questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Michael. Well, my topic is faith in a time of pandemic. And I wonder what it is that would make you believe. What would make you believe in God? I asked that question to an atheist friend of mine, and he'd clearly been asked that question before because he had his answer on a hair trigger. I said, what would make you believe in God? He said, if God rearranged the stars in the sky to spell out the 10 commandments, then I would believe. I wonder how you would respond to that. Well, as he said that, I actually had two thoughts all at once, which is very extraordinary for me. I mean, I usually average about 2 thoughts per month, but I've had my third coffee by then. And I thought of taking the conversation in two different directions. One direction I could have gone in was to say to him, okay, you have raised the bar of faith up to galactic heights. Okay, fine. Have you considered the current arrangement of the stars? Have you considered that you are already in a miraculous harmony called the universe? And the fact that there are stars in any kind of arrangement and that you are there to observe them is a miracle orders of magnitude more improbable than anything the religions of the world have ever propositioned. I thought of going down that route. But then I thought better of it. I had this second thought, and this is the response that I voiced. He said, I'd believe in God if God spelt out the 10 commandments in the sky. And I just asked him, would you like such a God? And his response was instant. No, I could never like God. But if he proved his existence in that sense, then I guess I would have to submit. That's the way that he thought. And at that point, we had great common ground because neither of us liked the God he disbelieved in. If you think God is the sort of God to pull a cosmic parlor trick and exert almighty power just to tell you, thou shalt not, I don't like that God either. But thankfully, that's not the God of the Bible. And that's not the God that I want to talk to you about today. I've got a Bible here, and I'd love to read to you a story about a famous doubter who came to faith. I want to see, as I read out this story, you should have some John's Gospels with you wherever I go. I always insist that people have John's Gospels in front of them so you can crack open the Bible and get a look at it for yourself. So please do open that up to John chapter 20, verse 24. And we're going to look at a famous unbeliever who became a believer. And as I read this, I want you to ask yourself, what is it that made doubting Thomas believe? And what is it that's meant to make us believe? Okay, let's have a look. John chapter 20. Jesus has risen from the dead on Easter Sunday. This is 1 week later. Thomas doesn't buy the story. He's not believing it. And this is how it unfolds. John 20, verse 24. Now, Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We've seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Now, did you notice what it was that Thomas was demanding? Okay, he had a standard of belief. He thought that there was an evidential bar that Jesus had to get over. He wanted to put his hands into the side, the wounded side of the crucified Jesus, which is kind of an extraordinary thing to want to do. If I'm ever in hospital and I tell you that I'm ill, please just believe me. Please don't say to me, "Unless I put my hand into your wounded side, I will not believe." Please just believe me. Bring the grapes. That's all I want. Okay, I don't want you to do a Thomas on me. But what is Thomas doing here? Thomas, he wants to know that the one who has beaten death is the one who has gone through death and come out the other side. It's actually amazing. Thomas does not want to look to the stars in order to believe. He actually wants to look to the scars in order to believe. The scars of Jesus will make him believe. Now, isn't that different? That's totally different from my atheist friend. He wanted the stars to rearrange in order to spell out the Ten Commandments, an assertion of power and control from on high, because that's the kind of God he thought we're talking about. Thomas knew better. Thomas knew Jesus. Thomas knew he would encounter true divinity, not by looking to the stars, but by looking to the scars. The scars of Jesus, these battle wounds, these pledges that Jesus has gone to hell and back for us. These marks that Jesus has walked through the valley of the shadow of death and has come out the other side. It's when Thomas sees the scars that he starts to believe. We're thinking about faith in a time of pandemic, and you might think, there's no way I could believe in a good God when there's a pandemic out there. There's a pandemic out there. People are dying. How can anyone believe in a good God? That's a really good question. But I think the only way you can believe in a good God within this suffering world is to believe in this God, the God who has joined us in our valley of the shadow of death. Yes, we need to know that there is something on the other side of this veil of tears. We need to know that there is a feasting joy at the end of all things. But first we need to know that there is love that has come down, that accompanies us, that befriends us, that walks with us. Thomas sees the scars, and in seeing the scars, he says, verse 28, "My Lord and my God." It's this mountaintop moment of biblical faith. And what is Thomas looking at? Wounds, battle scars. Because it is the God of the cross that can make sense of a suffering world. There's a great writer of the 20th century called John Stott. He wrote over 40 books, biblical commentary, cultural commentary. And perhaps his greatest work was called The Cross of Christ. And in it, he talks about how he can believe in a good God in this suffering world. And the only way he can believe in a good God in this suffering world is because of the cross, because Jesus endured hell for us. He says, I could never myself believe in God if it were not for the cross. The only God I could believe in is the one Nietzsche ridiculed as God on the cross. In the real world of pain, how could one worship a God who was immune to it? I have entered many Buddhist temples in different Asian countries and stood respectfully before the statue of the Buddha, his legs crossed, arms folded, eyes closed, the ghost of a smile playing around his mouth, a remote look on his face, detached from the agonies of the world. But each time, after a while, I've had to turn away. And in my imagination, I have turned instead to that lonely, twisted, tortured figure on the cross, nails through hands and feet, back lacerated, limbs wrenched, brow bleeding from thorn pricks, mouth dry and intolerably thirsty, plunged into God-forsaken darkness. That is the God for me. How can you have faith in a time of pandemic? You need to know that there is a God who has experienced our suffering and a God who has come through to the far side. You need both. You need the compassion and you need the conquest. You need to know he's been with you, and you need to know there is hope beyond this veil of tears. And Thomas looks to Jesus, who has conquered death, but still bears the marks of his crucifixion. Still bears the marks of the God who has gone to hell and back for us. And he says, my Lord and my God. That's what did it for Thomas. I wonder what might do it for you. What would convince you that Jesus is Lord? Well, in the Bible, Jesus is Lord. It sounds very religious language, and it is. It sounds quite technical, but let me boil it down. According to the Bible, unless Jesus is Lord, death is Lord. Okay? Unless Jesus is Lord, death is Lord. What I mean by that is, do you ever play computer games? The basic kind of platform computer game is you go through a level, you get to the end of level 1, and you face a boss, right? And you got to defeat the boss somehow, okay? You laser guns and everything. And if you get through this bad boss, you get to level 2. And at the end of level 2, there's another boss, and he's a bit bigger and a bit stronger, right? And then you get to level 3, level 4, level 5. By level 10, he's like nuclear powered, and you cannot defeat him. And whatever you throw at this big bad boss, he is undefeatable. And yet, if you're going to win the computer game, you need to defeat the big bad boss. According to the Bible, in life, there is a big bad boss, and its name is death. And it has never lost a battle, ever. It's the undisputed champion of the world. It defeats not only people and kings, but empires. It swallows us whole. No one has ever defeated it. And then Jesus comes along and he claims to be resurrection. He claims to be anti-death. He claims to be the one who can conquer the big bad boss. And you think, I'm not sure I could believe that. How could I possibly believe that Jesus is bigger than death? Well, you might have noticed that at the end of our little passage, it says Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, but these ones are written down so that you may believe that Jesus is this death-conquering Messiah. Could you possibly believe that? Let me give you 3 reasons why I think you can believe that Jesus is indeed Lord. Okay, here are the 3 reasons. They all begin with H, okay? You can believe in this death-conquering Lord because of the heavens, because of history, and because of him. The heavens, history, and him. And as I point to the heavens, what I'm really saying is we already live in a life from the dead kind of a world. Therefore, it's not such a big leap to believe in a life from the dead Lord. We already believe in a life from the dead world. It's not such a huge leap to believe in a life from the dead Lord. Think of the heavens, and let me point to 4 different aspects of creation that are preaching to you about a life from the dead kind of Lord. First fact about the heavens: we've had everything from nothing. That's extraordinary. What an extraordinary miracle. Everything from nothing. I happen to believe in the virgin birth of Jesus. This would be the virgin birth of the cosmos, and without a virgin. That's some going, isn't it? That's some going. Everything from nothing. I mean, it's the ultimate magic trick, isn't it? Nothing up the sleeve, no magician, just pure magic out of nowhere for no reason. Everything has come from nothing. Don't we already live in a life from the dead kind of a world? Everything's come from nothing. Order has come from chaos, okay? If we've come from a grand explosion, this is the most finely tuned explosion I've ever seen. When your mother told you to clean up your room because it looks like a bomb has hit it, she was not commending you on the finely tuned ordering of your room, okay? She was telling you that it's chaos. How has an explosion led to this finely tuned order? How have we got order out of chaos? You might want to press into issues like the fine-tuning of the universe. But as you're looking into them, you're basically discovering that this is a life from the dead kind of a world. An extraordinary and improbable life from the dead kind of a world. So we've got everything's come from nothing, order's come from chaos, life has come from non-life. As a Christian, I happen to believe that on Easter Sunday, the non-living Jesus came to life, right? On Easter Sunday, that one in the tomb rose again from the dead. The non-living Jesus became living. But listen to the story that is told of our human origins. The story that is told of the origins of life on earth is that everything has emerged from non-life. All life has emerged from non-life. Okay, you think I believe in a miracle, okay? We already believe in a miracle that is orders of magnitude more improbable than anything that Christians are saying. I just happen to believe that one figure has emerged from the dead, and I believe in a God of resurrection to pull off the miracle. You see, a lot of atheists say to me, I could never believe the Christian story. The atheist story is far more improbable. It's not just that one figure came to life from non-life, it's that all life came to life from non-life and without a God of resurrection to work the miracle. Listen, we already live in a life from the dead kind of a world. We already do. We've got everything from nothing, order from chaos, life from non-life, and we've got minds from mindless matter, consciousness from mindless matter. You know, the atheist philosopher David Chalmers, who is Australian as well, he says, look, to get from brains to minds is miraculous. How do you go from the water of the brain to the wine of consciousness? It's called the hard problem of consciousness for a reason. It's miraculous. How do you do it without a miraculous God? See, these four facts of the heavens, these four facts of creation are telling you we already live in a life from the dead world. It's not such a leap to believe in a life from the dead God. I could press into this more, but time is flying. The heavens tell you we live in a life from the dead world. History tells you we're living in a life from the dead world, okay? Here are some facts about first century history. Jesus was at times wildly popular, wildly unpopular. He was put to death by the Jews on account of blasphemy, but executed by the Romans on account of treason. He died on that cross. He was placed in a tomb. The whereabouts of that tomb was known. 3 days later, that tomb was empty, and his followers all had experiences of the risen Jesus, like Thomas had here. They all had experiences of the risen Jesus, which went on for another 40 days and then stopped when Christians say Jesus returned to heaven. And the story continued. The body was never found, and all the eyewitnesses stuck to their story, even on pain of death. Those are the historical facts. How do you explain them? And different people have different explanations for them. But I think the most rational explanation for all those facts is that Jesus did indeed rise just as he said he did. And in fact, it would be extraordinary if Jesus didn't rise, given who he is. We'll get to that. But I don't just point to the history of the first century. I point to history since the first century, because history since the first century has seen an extraordinary growth of the Jesus movement, which is extraordinary when you consider the source of it. Jesus, through human eyes, is merely a penniless preacher, homeless, shooting his mouth off around some backwater of a long-dead empire. He's surrounded by total losers and no-hopers like Thomas. Thomas is meant to be one of his chief spokesmen, right? Not even Thomas believes in him. Jesus is crucified in ignominy, aged 33 years old. And he's the most famous man who ever walked the planet. He has built the world that you live in. You might want to ask me questions about that, but he has. He's built the world you live in more than you know. And again, we've got this miraculous thing going on, this water into wine kind of miracle. You know, water into wine is a miracle I already believe in, but how do you explain going from a crucifixion to world domination? History is teaching to you a life from the dead thing. It is. It already is, right? You know how we inferred a Big Bang? We inferred a Big Bang because we observed an expanding universe, and we just hit the rewind button until you get to the 0 point, right? Look at the expanding universe of the church, the expanding universe of Christianity. There are more Christians today than there were yesterday, and there'll be more again the next day, and then more again the next day. Okay, we are this expanding universe. Wind back the clock, and you get to this point on Easter Sunday. Something was unleashed. There's been incredible spiritual power that has been unleashed, and you can trace it in human history. You can trace it in the heavens, you can trace it in history. But finally, if you want to believe that Jesus is Lord, look at him. That's what our passage is really encouraging us to do. These things are written so that you may believe. And look, this is what happened to me. I was reading through the Gospels myself, and I was looking at the towering personality of Jesus and his stooping love. And I saw in Jesus someone just so incredible. I remember getting halfway through Luke's gospel. There's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and this third biography of Jesus. And I saw the way that Jesus joins us in the valley of the shadow of death. He is not the God who yells down commandments from on high. He's the God who joins you in your suffering to be with you, to be for you, to befriend you, to love you. And I just saw this incredible, this conflation of might and mercy in Jesus. And I remember just thinking to myself, he's great, he's tops, he's number one, he's numero uno, he is Lord, he is Lord. And at some point, when you look at the character of Jesus, you do this calculation. You think to yourself, I know death is powerful. I know death always wins, but I think death has met its match in Jesus. You know how kids, they do that superhero game, you know, they go, who would win in a fight between Batman and Spider-Man, or who would win in a fight between the Iron Giant, and they think, you know, well, this guy's got all the technology, but this guy's got all the magic powers, and you think about who would win. Okay, let's do it. Let's do that with Jesus. Pick up a gospel. You've got these John's gospels in your hands. These are our gifts to you. I want you to take these. I want you to take it away and read it. Open up, shoot up a prayer and say, Jesus, show yourself. It's a no-lose proposition. If he's not there, he's not going to show himself. But if he is there, I want you to pray, show me that you are Lord. Show me if you indeed are bigger than death. And as you read through, you will encounter this towering personality. And I want you to think, I know that the pandemic is raging. I know this is a suffering world. I know death always wins, but maybe this one. Maybe this one, he's the fulfillment of the heavens. Maybe this one, he's the fulfillment of history. Maybe this one really is Lord. Will you do that? Will you take up John's gospel? Will you keep on reading? Will you shoot up that prayer? Because we all have to walk through the valley of the shadow. Don't do it alone. Do it with the God who joins you. Do it with the God who has war wounds, battle scars. He's gone to hell and back for you. He can get you through this pandemic. He can get you through this veil of tears. He can get you to the feasting joy because he is Lord. Well, that's my talk. And you guys might have all sorts of questions about it. And that's why I'm here. I love to keep the conversations going. But do take those John's Gospels away with you. Do be brewing up those questions. I'll take those in a second. And I'll speak to you in a little bit. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Glenn. There's so much there that is so helpful for us in modelling how we communicate the gospel so clearly and so well. I really enjoyed listening to that. So if you've got questions for Glenn, there might be questions that you would anticipate someone who isn't a Christian asking. That's okay, you can ask them. But also it'd be really helpful to think as Christians, as evangelists, how can we learn from that? So if you've got questions about how Glenn put that talk together, what was in his mind as he was thinking about it, why he did it that way rather than another way, then ask those kind of questions. We'll have 15 minutes in a little bit to ask some of those questions of Glenn. But now we're going to be going to Greece, and we're going to hear a song from our friend Tuki.
Hello everyone, my name is Tuki. I'm in Athens in Greece. So I have 5 minutes to play a song for you. And the first thing I want to do is to explain a little bit of what I'm doing and what's the idea behind of what I do. So
okay?
The main thing is that every person in the world, they presuppose God one way or another. They presuppose Christian values, Christian truths in their own worldviews. And you can find this all over the place, like in music, you can find it in TV series, in movies, in lyrics, in poems. And what we can do is try to find this unknown God that they have in their own worldviews and connect it to Jesus somehow through the narrative of the gospel. And that's what Paul did in Athens some years ago. He was talking to the Athenians about the temple of the unknown God that he found in their own city. It's not some easy task to do, but sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not so easy. But it's a nice way to speak to people about the gospel. So for example, the song that I will sing to you is a song that I believe it can really help you speak about the sin and about the fallen human nature because of sin. And so after the song, I usually have a small talk and explain more about the gospel and about Jesus. So what I will usually say in an event like this will be that I know that everyone felt pain because somebody hurt us. We also felt pain because sometimes we understand that we hurt somebody else. And also sometimes we feel pain because we hurt ourselves. This song is about this weird idea that's going on in our world. And there's a question in the chorus asking, what have I become, my sweetest friend? So that's the question that we need to answer. What have we become as humanity? What have I become as an individual? If you know the song, please feel free to sing it with me, and I hope you enjoy it. I hurt myself today to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's real. The needle does a hole, the old familiar sting. Try to kill it all away, but I remember everything. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end. And you could have it all, my empire of dirt. Now I'll let you down make you hurt. I wear this crown of thorns upon my liar's chair, full of broken thoughts that I cannot repair. Beneath the stains of time, the feeling disappear. You are someone else, but I am still right here. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end. And you could have it all, my empire of dirt. I will let you down, I will make you hurt. If I could start again, a million miles away, I will keep myself, I will find a way.
Thanks so much, Tuki, for that. Great. Well, we've had lots of questions coming in. Keep them coming. Keep voting on them. We're going to take them generally in kind of popularity order from the top. And Glenn will join me. Glenn, thanks so much for that. That was so helpful. We've got lots of questions, some of them as if they're not Christians, but some of them clearly thinking about how we can prepare talks better. So hopefully they'll come up on the screen. You can see them too. So winning, Glenn. I think they like your talk. I want to believe all over again. I've always said, actually, the mark of a good evangelistic talk is if you're sitting there as a Christian thinking, I wish I could become a Christian again, then they may have done something right.
You can, Michael. You can be a Christian today, Michael.
Thank you. But what is the key? What is the key in enabling you? Is it a heart captured by God? Is it practice? Is it opportunity? Is it time spent with unbelievers? So how does that? What really helps you as an evangelist?
Perhaps the one thing that helps me more than anything else is to believe in the compelling attractiveness of Jesus himself, and that to open up the scriptures is to reveal him to people. And therefore my job is to open up the scriptures, and these things are written so that you may believe. Oh, I've got, here's a big help, right? These things are written so that you might believe. They are written about Jesus. And as I point biblically to Christ, God is speaking to people. And I believe that in the core of my bones, that what preaching is, it is the third form of the word of God, as Karl Barth and Martin Luther would say, there is Christ is the eternal word, the scriptures are the written word, but proclamation is the third form of the word. And to the degree that my proclamation is scriptural, pointing to Jesus, that I'm speaking God's words to you. So I think you need to believe that in your bones. And if you believe that in your bones, then you crack open the Bible and you get everybody else to crack open the Bible, and you get excited about Jesus, and you just point and you say, look, do you see him? Do you see him? He's offered to you. Do you want him? I think that's the essence of evangelism for me.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. Thanks. Okay, we'll get to the next question. So this is someone saying, as a Muslim, I cannot trust a God who can be wounded. I'd rather trust a God who's untouched by suffering, who is strong when I am not. Isn't that a better God?
I'll tell the story that Nabil Qureshi often tells about that. He was a Muslim who came to faith in Jesus later in life, but he would often say to his Muslim friends to explain the difference with Jesus. He said, imagine on Friday prayers, you're looking your best and you're you're on your way to the mosque, and you find in a canal there is a little girl 7 years old, and she's drowning. Now, you don't want to get messy. You don't want to get dirty. You know, you're looking your finest. What would people think if you'd show up to the mosque looking messy, looking dirty? So, of course, you would let her drown in the canal, would you? And of course, they said, no, of course we wouldn't let her drown in the canal. You would jump into that canal, and the messier you got, the more you would look like a hero when you arrived at the mosque, right? And the glory, your glory would be greater, would be increased by the fact that you dived down into that mess in order to save and in order to redeem. And then Nabil Qureshi would ask the question, you know, what has your God done for you? And when we look at a world that is very messy, it is not less glorious to dive in and rescue. It is more glorious. I think I tell that kind of story.
Yeah. I remember Nabil sharing that story, actually. It was so powerful. And I was doing a debate once in, I think it was University of Manchester, with a Muslim imam. And he made that very kind of statement, the question that we just had. And I told that story back. And you could just see in the eyes of everyone in the room, yeah, like, right. Of course that is the case. Right. And so appealing to that response in our own hearts shows that actually that's where we see real true beauty and true power. That's really helpful. Okay, next question. I'm quite reluctant to use the Bible in an evangelistic talk, but you did it really well. Can you give me tips on how we can do this? So thank you for your honesty, but also thank you. So that's a good question, because sometimes we kind of feel like, people are so far back, you know, is it a bit of a jump to maybe come to the Bible? So you've obviously done it well. Talk about how you use the Bible in evangelism.
Yeah, of course you use the Bible in evangelism. Of course you do. And you might think, well, but they don't believe in the power of the Bible. Yeah, but you do, right? You know, if someone holds up a bank and they decide, I'm going to hold up a bank, but I'm not going to bring a gun with me because maybe the others won't believe in the power of my gun. And you're just like, well, do you believe in the power of your gun? Do you believe in the power of your weapon? Do you believe that God's word really addresses people with divine power and authority? Now, this is not to say that this bit of technology is the word of God in the sense that, right? I can memorize John chapter 20, and I can tell you that story, and that is as much the word of God as if I refer to this paper copy that I've got in front of me. So let's not get too hung up on the technology of it. And so, yeah, you don't necessarily have to have a visible, tangible Bible in your hand, but I don't know why you wouldn't tell the biblical stories in the way that the Spirit has chosen to author those stories, because that's where the power is. So I'm not saying that you always have to have a Bible in your hand. I quite often have nothing in my hand, and I find that, you know, that it's like a high wire act. You know, if you've got nothing in your hands, if you've got nothing in front of you as a speaker, you will stumble, you will fall, but everyone will watch even closer because they kind of want you to fall, right? And if you go without a net, okay, everyone's like, oh my goodness, he has no net. And that doesn't mean that you know your script perfectly. It doesn't mean that you even got a script necessarily. So I'm not saying you definitely have to have something in your hand. You have to have a Bible in your hand. But I don't, like, if there is this, I think it's true. There's threefold word of God. I think there is Christ, the eternal word, the scriptures, the written word, and proclamation, the contemporary proclaimed word. That is only powerful to the degree that it scripturally points to Jesus. So you got to figure out the technology and the way in which it happens. But let me also raise a banner for: buy a box of Gospels. Get everyone in the room to have a copy of the Gospels, because then it leads to what I was able to do. You know, I was able to have the conclusion to my talk that I was able to have because everyone has God's word. And I think people then have a tangible way of taking things forward. So yeah, hope that helps.
That's really helpful, and that is excellent practice for any student event, well, any event evangelistically, to make sure that we've got Gospels that we can get into people's hands, get people actually looking at it. It's so much easier then to encourage people to take it further, and the follow-up has already begun as you've got people opening a Gospel themselves. The next question comes up, says, you said the only way we can believe in a good God is when God came down to us. But so were Jews in the Old Testament. Oh, sorry. But so were Jews in the Old Testament not able to believe in a good God.
Jesus is the very fulfillment of those Jewish scriptures. And you'll notice that I used very Old Testament phraseology at times. I talked about walking through the valley of the shadow of death, which you might recognize from the Old Testament. It's one of the most famous Psalms, that book of right in the middle of the Bible, 150 songs. And the entirety of the Old Testament is telling this very story about that there is a God who would be wounded in order to save us. That's on page 3 of the Bible, right? Like literally, as soon as there is suffering in this world, God promises that he will come, he will enter into our humanity, and he will be struck in order to bring the death blow to death, right? So this is an entirely Old Testament idea. And the Old Testament is pointing forward to the time in which God the Son really will join the human race and actually affect all this. But they're on tiptoes looking ahead. They're believing this stuff. They're singing songs about how we believe in a God who is with us in the valley. So, you know, it's a very old, very ancient idea. The only thing that's new about the New Testament is finally Jesus arrives to actually do the thing that's been promised all along. But Old Testament believers, New Testament believers, we're both looking back at the same God who enters into that valley.
Brilliant. Thank you. So helpful. Okay, next question. This is fresh and speaking with authority. Can you tell us about your prayer life and how it leads you to be used by the Spirit in this powerful way? Slightly personal question.
Yeah, what's my prayer life? So I have a scatter brain, and so I really need to center myself when I pray. I really need to take myself in hand, and I do that in a number of different ways. I use the Lord's Prayer very, very much as the sort of the guide rails for my prayer life. You know the way that you do it. You know, Our Father. Let's meditate on the fatherhood of God in heaven. The majesty, the transcendence. Hallowed be your name. May your name be hallowed in my heart. And so so I use that. I use other centering techniques, you know, the Jesus prayer and things like that to quiet myself down. I use an app, daily prayer. It's the Church of England. You know, you get all the lectionary readings for the day and some great prayers to pray along with that. And I guess as I give advice on prayer, I never want to make prayer seem like a thing, you know, because I can imagine there are people right now, they're writing down, oh, here are the things to do, like do that, oh, tick this off, tick this off, you know, and I don't want you to feel like prayer is, I need to do this. And as long as I've done this, I can feel righteous about myself. I can walk into the day knowing I've had my quiet time. I've done my devotional, tick, you know, it's the personality. I believe about that with preaching. Preaching is, I don't want there to be a talk in between me and you. I want to just deliver the person of Jesus to you. And in prayer, I don't want there to be this thing called prayer that I tweak and fine tune. It's about enjoying Jesus. And so I have a very strong belief in the priesthood of Christ, which means I don't have to yell up to heaven to be heard. I'm already in Jesus, whispering in the Father's ear. The Spirit filling me with Abba Father, and it's you've got to enjoy God, and maybe that's my bit of advice. Really, is don't try to be a better prayer. God forbid. Enjoy God more, right? Don't try to be a better prayer. Enjoy God more. That's my advice.
Fantastic, really, really helpful. What I've found often as an evangelist is it's so helpful to pray through my talk before I give it, particularly if I'm repeating a talk that I might have done on another occasion or doing something quite similar. That says, when you've done a talk, you put it in the freezer and then you need to defrost it through prayer so that it becomes alive again in your own heart. And I found that has often got me excited afresh as I've prayed through the truths that I'm going to be communicating to others. That's so helpful.
Good advice.
Preparation question. What guided your decision to not unpack the classic alternative explanations for the empty tomb, the resurrection appearances, etc.? So your way of kind of going to the resurrection was quite different maybe to the way that people would normally kind of unpack a talk on the resurrection. So how did you come to the way of doing it that you did?
I mean, time is one consideration. I mean, I could have gone more into alternative explanations, but I'm not a big fan of. You'll notice that when I do an argument for the resurrection, the whole, the 5 minimal historical facts was a tiny portion of it. I don't find it very convincing. I don't know many people who find it very convincing. It is only one part of a much bigger, proclamation. Because if someone doesn't believe in a life from the dead kind of God, then any explanation of those 5 minimal facts is preferable to the Christian one. And they are right to resist. Okay, if there is no God of resurrection, they are entirely right to resist your telling of those 5 minimal facts and your explanation for them. What can they do except resist those? So if you lean just on the 5 minimal facts of, he died, he definitely died, he was laid in the tomb, the whereabouts were known about, the tomb was empty, they had post-resurrection experiences, those resurrection experiences stopped, the body was never discovered. If you lean on that, it will break apart in your hands. I urge you not to lean simply on the 5 historical facts. Maybe in your life, that helped you in your Christian journey quite a lot, and you lean on it. I don't think it helps very many people, actually, which is why I major on the heavens, I major on him, and I major on the second part of the history point. I think the second part of the history point is so much more difficult to account for. How do you go from a crucifixion to world domination? The events of the first century history explain that. But let's look at history since then. So, yeah, I don't go too much into the 5 minimal facts. I think it's helpful as one part of a much bigger proclamation of Jesus.
That's really helpful and very thought-provoking as we think about how we go to the resurrection. Because obviously, if you look through the book of Acts, every apostolic sermon proclaims the resurrection. But maybe we need to think more creatively about how we can then come to that in our own evangelistic preaching ourselves.
Can I just say on that, on Acts 17, Paul in Acts 17 proclaims that Jesus rose from the dead, and that is the proof that God will judge the world through the man he has appointed. He's given proof of this to all people by raising him from the dead. Resurrection is the proof. Paul offers no proof for the resurrection. He proclaims the resurrection. The resurrection is proof for judgment. He offers no proof for the resurrection. He proclaims it. And he trusts that him, the power of the risen Lord Jesus will, because that's the proof. The proof of the resurrection is that Jesus is alive now and confronting me with living power right now. Yeah, I guess he did not rot in that Jerusalem tomb after all. That's the proof of the resurrection. So declare it.
Yeah. Great. So here's a question picking up on that that might be asked more by a skeptic. If the universe is evidence of a life from death God, why has he made a world where all life ends in death?
And that is the nature of suffering and the nature of death and the nature of what Christians call the fall, is that you have life and it decays. And every experience you have of suffering is disease. There's a healthy operation of a biosystem and it kind of breaks down. Or you have relational breakdown. You have the good thing that then falls apart, which actually doesn't tell the atheistic story. That tells the Christian story. Every experience of suffering you have, including death, tells the Christian story. The Christian story is you have an original life-giving good, and that then decays, that then falls, okay? What is really inexplicable is how you get death, non-living, living. That is bonkers. That is the nuts thing. So the evidence of death all around us points to. I once debated the chief executive of the British Humanist Association, Andrew Copson, and his entire speech was about parasites. He said, we can't worship God because parasites, and he just listed off all these horrible nasties that do terrible things. And in the rebuttals, what was my response to parasites? I was like, brilliant. That's a fantastic explanation of the Christian story. Because let's press into parasites. What do you have? You have an original life-giving good, and then you have this secondary thing that latches onto it and sucks the life out of it and twists it and perverts it, okay? And that is everybody's experience. You can't think of an experience of suffering that is not, there is something good that then goes wrong. Well, as soon as you tell that story, you're telling the Christian story. You're not telling the atheist story at all. Every experience of suffering actually tells the Christian story.
Yeah, so helpful. Thank you. I think this is our last question that we've got time for. Would you lead people in prayer at the end of some of your talks? And if so, how would you do that?
Yeah, very often. And one thing I would always do is tell people, look, this is not magic. This is not a magic trick. And I probably do this because I gave my life to Jesus 1,000 times in my teenage years, and I thought there was a technique to doing it. I will try and clear away a magical understanding of what's about to happen, and just say to you, look, if you've come to the position where Thomas is, you've looked at Jesus, you really think he might be the one, you should tell him. Thomas told him. And I'm going to do this weird thing called prayer, and not everyone in this room is going to be ready for it, but I beg your indulgence. Can you just stare at your shoes for 30 seconds if this is not for you? You can stare at your shoes, but for some people, you know that Jesus is Lord, and you want to tell him, and you want to say, Jesus, will you walk with me through this dark valley? And I'm just going to offer that opportunity now, and then I'll sort of lead in a prayer. And then at the end of the prayer, I'll say to people, listen, if you have prayed that Christianity is not a solo sport, it's a team sport, do tell somebody. Tell the person you came with, have a chat with me, but we do this thing together. That's how I do it.
Great. Thank you so much, Glenn. That's been really helpful. We've really appreciated your answers as well, and your talk, which has been a really good model for us. You're going to be doing a seminar this afternoon, aren't you? Just want to give us 30 seconds about what you're going to be speaking about for those who want to come?
About creativity, using creativity in evangelism. Creativity is not the icing on the gospel cake. Creativity is the sharp end of the sword of the Spirit going into people. Okay, so when you tell a story, for instance, you are not just taking the high ground. When you tell a story, you are taking all the ground. You are determining the world. You are casting a vision for heaven and earth and everything else, and you are placing the person inside your world, and you can do with them what you want to do with them. It's the most extraordinary. Using creativity in evangelism is not the soft sell. It's not sweetening the pill over here. It's not just opening up the windows and letting some light in so that you can go and do the truth business over there. It is captivating the imagination. Just think about how military that is. We captivate, we capture, we tear down strongholds, we tear down imaginations by capturing their imagination and showing them Jesus. That's what we'll talk about this afternoon.
Brilliant. Thank you. So Glenn and 3 others will be doing seminars this afternoon. They'll be at 5:30 Central European Time. And we hope that you can join one of those seminars, but there'll be lots of practical ideas. We want to equip you to be equipped to share the gospel. And we're particularly thinking about how we can do that in this time of pandemic when all of our contexts have been changed. So there'll be loads of ideas that'll be really fresh and relevant. Think about how we can plan for evangelism in the midst of this. Peter Dre will be doing a seminar on that as well later on. So go to the website later on. All the links will be on the website on this page that you logged into to watch this morning. So you don't need to go anywhere else. It'll all be there. Just click on the link. You'll be taken to a Zoom room and those seminars, 5:30 Central European Time, lasting for 1 hour. We're going to hear some reports now because we want to hear what's been happening. We heard a couple of nights ago about what had happened in Scotland and how the Scottish team had worked in collaboration, all of the student groups across the country, to put on an online mission week. And that example from earlier in the year inspired the students in Israel to think about how they could do something evangelistic online as well. So we're going to see a little bit about what they've just begun to do in Israel.
In times like this, we might not have been able to connect with each other the way that we used to. Plans have changed, and so has our way of communication. Even something as simple as having a cup of coffee with a friend seems impossible. مرحبا، اسمي ريم وأنا بخدم مع رابطة الطلاب المسيحيين في إسرائيل. شالوم، اسمي ريم باني مشتركة إمرجونا ستودنتي مسيحيين بإسرائيل. Hi, my name is Reem, and I serve with the Fellowship of Christian Students in Israel. There are many questions that we think about or hear around our campus, such as, am I significant in this universe or just an accident? ليه الله بيسمح بالشر بالعالم؟ إيه خيف شر لها أمين بإلهيم شو كل كاخ رخوك مهم التقوت? And many more. We want to explore these questions together. That's why we've asked speakers from different backgrounds who speak Ivrit, Arabic, and English to help us discuss these topics together. So, let's talk over coffee. بو نشرب لي كافيه، هات نحكي على فنجان قهوة.
Well, isn't that really interesting to see what they have been doing and what they are planning to do in Israel, and the creative way that they are still being able to proclaim the gospel during lockdown. Now, we hoped to interview Rasha at this point to ask her a bit more about what's going on. Unfortunately, she's got COVID and is very unwell, so we want to be praying for her and thinking of her at this time. But do pray for the movement there in Israel and for that exciting initiative as they're putting on these creative videos, sharing something of the gospel. And another thing that we want to share with you is from Serbia. So hopefully Samuel Pochowski is going to join me. Brother.
Hello,
welcome.
Greetings from Belgrade, from Serbia.
Great. It is so good to have you with us and to see you and to hear you as well. Samuel, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm missing travelings, but I'm doing good.
Good. So Samuel, during the period of lockdown earlier in the year, you worked actually in collaboration with others from right across your region, didn't you? Tell us a bit about some of the creative things that you were able to do during that time, and tell us a bit about what impact that had and some of the fruit of that.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for this question. We were, because you know the Balkan region, we are very relational. We like to meet people and travel, and lockdown for us was very big a challenge. But through the partnerships in the Balkan IFES movement, especially with the movement of from Albania and from Montenegro, and also Bosnian movement joined, we organize a big Zoom evangelistic event. Almost every week we have a speakers from Europe. We had the speakers like Dr. Roland Werner, Pablo Martinez, John Lennox, Michael Oates. And also we had a few local speakers like evangelists who are rising stars in the European evangelistic world, like Slavko Hadži, Zefja Nicole, Daniel Petkovsky, Johan from Italy. Every week we have a good event that up to 200 students show up. And we were very much encouraged because after these speeches, we could send the PDF file books of these authors to the people that people can read. And we know a few people became believers, and one good story is that one of professor of mathematics from the Belgrade University at engineer faculty, he gave life to Jesus after 3 months of the Zoom lectures, and he wrote me a text message. He said, "First time in my life I felt that God is love and I want to have a personal relationship with him." Yesterday I visited him. He's reading Bible. He read all of the books I gave him, Bonhoeffer, Keller, all of these books. He's really going deep into the Christian discipleship, and we are very much encouraged by his example. But he shared that what happened to him, he shared with other professors at Belgrade University. And one professor of the Orthodox seminary, who is professor of the Old Testament, he said, "I want to meet this Eus, I want to meet this Samuel." And I went to the Orthodox seminary to give him all of the books that we publish. And now he's coming every Thursday to our Bible studies, this professor. And this professor, he wants to change Orthodox Church. He wants to make some influence, so pray for him. And Brother Slavko Hadžić, he spoke last Thursday in our office, and professor was there with one of his assistants. And that kind of stories were very happy, very encouraging, because most of these lectures on a Facebook, we have about 10,000 views. We boosted on a Facebook, like Roland lecture has a 12,000 views, and a lot of people watch our lecture. Even there was very interesting one very right-wing nationalistic guy who didn't like evangelicals and Protestants in the past. He advertised our lecture of John Lennox, and he said, if you want to hear something good, listen, John Lennox, the nightmare of atheists. And we were very much encouraged that this guy who is attacking us in the past, now he's like promoting our lecture. That was very much encouraging for us. And also we had a smaller events, Michael, where our younger students who were in the FEUER before, they could practice to give evangelistic talks. And we have that in Novi Sad, we have that in Macedonia, in Bosnia, and we were exchanging with Brother Zef and Brother Daniel, like we give platforms to each other, student leaders, to share the gospel and to develop their gift. Also, one good thing, what happened yesterday, we heard that first Christians in the first century grow because they show the mercy. And we have in Serbia a lot of international students. When the lockdown happened, they didn't have what to eat. Countries from Africa and other countries, they stopped to give them their finances. And Sister Ljubica, our staff, and Tijana Pljakic, she's like, they created the food bank. Our ministry created the food bank, and we were visiting these international students that everybody forgot. And that was a great opportunity for our students and staff to share good news of Jesus Christ. Also, one thing what happened, which was very interesting for us and encouraging, is that we started the sport events because we couldn't meet indoor, and with Brother Owen Brown, he helped us to encourage us to start some sport events, and we were doing for 3 months volleyball on the sand. We have a beautiful lake in Belgrade here, and also students in Novi Sad did the same. Every Sunday we spent 4 hours. First, students were listening, uncover some story from the Gospel of John, and then after that we played the volleyball. A lot of no-Christian students came. One young kid, he's 18 years old, finishing high school. He will be professional basketball. He came, he joined us, and 2 of them became believers, and I baptized them in our church. One is a student, he's karate chief, 7-time champion of Serbia. His name is George. He became a Christian. He got baptized, and now he's teaching in his gym other young people. And another guy is Professor Dr. Richard. He's a professor of chiropractic, and he got baptized, and he became a believer. And every Tuesday they are teaching some students of sports how the body is functioning, but they are reading the Bible in the beginning. And there is a lot of apologetic talks. Last time they lost 1 hour to explain why Christianity is truth, why Buddhism is not. And there was a wonderful opportunity that we saw from that. During the COVID, also we published some books. Where is God in Coronavirus World, and also from Pablo Martinez, one book that we gave to students in electronic form, but also when we print it, we give to others as well. As a result of the unlock, we started a ministry in 2 new cities, which is we never had the groups there. One is Subotica. Now we have a regular group there, and we have a staff worker there, and also another city, Kragujevac. We are starting an Alpha tomorrow there, and Alpha today students are giving flyers at universities to the students, because students are still there. But we are in general very encouraged, because God gave us a lot of opportunities to share the gospel. Even I had the privilege to speak on the national TV. They invited Muslim Imam, they invited leading psychology, and myself. And then I brought the Bible there, and the topic was how to deal with the fear from death. And that was a very much encouraged. A lot of pastors who never called us before, they called me and say, Samuel, now we want to pray for IFES ministry more because you're preaching the gospel. And I think that God gave us these wonderful opportunities.
Samuel, that is so helpful. There's so much there, just in a couple of minutes, and so many things that we can learn from. So the way that you collaborated, using Zoom creatively when you were in lockdown, and the incredible way that led to that professor coming to faith, the way that you showed hospitality to people through the food bank, because actually there are very practical ways, particularly when we find ourselves in lockdown, that we can serve people. And sometimes we can feel powerless to think, what can we do? But actually these are tangible, very practical ways that we can show something of the love of Christ. And then using the creativity of sport, which is such a good way, as we've heard already last night, to reach people for the gospel. And then to see how the ministry is growing into these two new cities in the north and the south of Serbia is just wonderful. Just going back to the Zoom events, Samuel, for those who are still, because some countries are still in lockdown, what did you learn practically from doing those events on Zoom together back in the spring? Any tips that you would give to people doing something similar?
But I think that the important thing is collaboration, because sometimes in this kind of situation you can feel that you're by yourself, but working with Zeph and Daniel, we really shared together a platform, and we were very much encouraging each other, and we said, let's do something, let's proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ boldly, and we create some Zoom events that can be useful for our movement, for our students, that students can invite other friends. And my job was to talk with the speakers. Daniel and Zeph, they advertise events. And I think if you are in the same region, you can share different speakers. One speaker can be for 3-4 movements, and we can involve other people as well. And never estimate, because sometimes for me it was very hard to speak or to lead, to moderate some of these Zoom events. And I asked myself, is this have some fruits or not? But then later, when we got a lot of emails, because Ljubica set up a good design. Steve from Niš, he set up technical things. And then we put a lot of contacts that students can contact and send emails. And we got a lot of encouraging emails. We got a lot of encouraging emails from the pastors who wrote to us and say, thank you for doing this, because this is very much encouraging for us in this time of crisis. And I think that God gave us this opportunity that we could use these Zoom events to proclaim the gospel. All of these lectures are online at Facebook, and a lot of people can go back and listen. But collaboration, prayer, and be direct with the gospel, because sometimes we want to be a little bit to apologize, to go around quoting other people, but I think now it's a time that we can preach the good news of Jesus Christ. I recorded a few videos like Philippians 4 and Matthew 11, where I spoke how we can find a peace and satisfaction in life in time of crisis. And I shared these videos. I was amazed how many people are watching these videos. Even one lady watch my videos, and she asked me, she said, how much you are charging for more videos to send me? And I said, no, we are doing that free of charge. And she was like, oh, really? Because people needs God. People needs hope. Students needs where to find the reason for the meaning of life. And I think this is amazing opportunity that we can be bold and we can preach the good news of Jesus Christ clearly.
Great. And Samuel, some people might be feeling a little bit discouraged, tired. What encouragement would you give maybe to those who are just feeling quite discouraged at the moment and feeling a little bit frustrated at what they can't do? Because there are obviously lots of things that we can't do in certain places, but how would you encourage them?
I just want to encourage you, you're not alone. God is with you, and God has a plan, and nothing is happening by accident. Pray to God, pray that God will give you and open your mind and give you a good vision, because sometimes we are like Elijah in a cave, and God is asking all of us, why you are there? Do something. We can pray, God can give us through the prayer, through the encouragement of fellowship, a lot of creative ideas. There is a lot of opportunities you can do. Don't stop, because the first Christians, they never stopped. And I think there is a challenge for us in Europe and motivation for us in Europe, that we can be inspired by the power of the Holy Spirit, and that God will give us creative, crazy ways how we can present gospel of Jesus Christ. Don't give up. Don't be in a cave. Trust God and do things together in a unity with the other movements in the region.
Sam, thanks so much for sharing with us. That's been such an encouragement, and God bless you in all that you're doing in your region, and we'll be praying for you. Thank you. Well, wasn't that really encouraging to hear of what's been happening down there in the Balkans, and loads of ideas that we can take from that? But the point of sharing these reports is not simply so that we can be encouraged as to what other people are doing, although that is wonderful. Hopefully it can also inspire us to think about what we can do. So I'd love to ask you, as you've been listening now to reports over the last day or so, What are you going to do in response to what you've heard? How can some of these ideas inspire you in your movements? We've all found ourselves in different situations. Some of you may have a great deal of freedom to be able to meet physically. Some of us are in situations of lockdown where we can't meet physically at all. But we've heard now so many stories of things that we can do in any of those situations. Creative, as Samuel said, crazy ideas of communicating the gospel. So be thinking now over these next 24 hours of what you're going to do in response to what you've been hearing and learning at this conference. And we would love to hear of initiatives that have sparked off and caught fire all over Europe, indeed all over the world, as a result of what we have heard. The purpose of this conference is not just so that we can be encouraged, but that we can take what we have learned and then put that into practice and to see fruit for the gospel all around our continents and all over the world. So do be thinking and praying as a group. And if you're meeting in small groups together, why not have time to discuss and pray later today and tomorrow to think about what you're going to do as a result of what you've been hearing and learning together. Well, we're going to go to Australia in a few moments' time, and we're going to hear from Sam Sham, which is going to be really encouraging and really helpful and practical. So we're looking forward to that. But before we do that, we're going to go to Croatia, and we're going to hear from Rocco, who's going to sing to us.
Thank you. This song is called The Anthem of the Ages, and it's written by the American singer-songwriter Brian Free. We have sung 1,000 verses of 1,000 lovely songs, and by more reason try to voice your praise. But the limits of our language and the earthly point of view has only served to screw the song we raise. So we journey on as pilgrims, strangers in a foreign land, and we march the strains of lesser battle song. But our distant chord grows stronger with each step along our way, and the melody calls us to come home. The anthem of the ages, worthy is the Lamb. The promise from the pages has united God and man. Holy, 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 singing to the great I am. The anthem of the ages, worthy is the Lamb. When we sing the song of our that exalt His precious name, and our hearts are bound in love with one accord. Though we give Him all the glory, with the symphony we raise, still our music can't compare to heaven's call. The anthem of the ages, worthy is the Lamb. The promise from the pages has united God and man. Holy, 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 singing to the great I am. The promise from the pages, worthy is the Lamb. Holy, 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 singing to the great I am. The anthem of the ages, worthy is the Lamb.
Thanks so much, Rocco, for that. Well, we're going to go now to Australia, and we're going to hear from Sam Chan. Sam, I was going to say good morning, but actually it's good evening for you, isn't it? Of course.
That's right. It's dinner time for me, so my stomach is rumbling right now.
Good. Well, we're really looking forward to what you're going to share with us. Sam, you're a medical doctor and an evangelist. You work for the City Bible Forum in Sydney, Australia. And you've also just had back surgery. So we're really thankful that you're well enough to be able to be standing up and presenting to us as well.
That's right. Back surgery earlier this week. Just got kicked out of hospital 2 days ago.
Well, we thank God that you're well and that you're well enough to be able to share with us. You're going to be sharing with us about how we do evangelism in the post-COVID world. Just to say, I told you at the beginning that we weren't going to have time for questions, but we've actually done well for time this morning. So we will have time for questions at the end, provided that you speak for the time that we asked you for. Just as we did earlier for Glenn, just to say, why don't you ask your questions on the Slido as Sam is speaking, and then we'll take the most popular questions at the end, and we'll give 10 minutes or so to looking at those questions together. So do be asking your questions as Sam goes through, but do have a pen and paper ready, because there's going to be so much now that's going to be really helpful for all of us. It's over to you, Sam.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you so much for having me. In case you're wondering, yes, I was born in Hong Kong. That's why I look Asian, but I grew up in Australia. I studied medicine at Sydney, but also did a PhD in the USA in theology. And my topic today is evangelism in a post-COVID world. We've all had to pivot. We've all had years of experience in evangelism, but suddenly COVID has come and we're like a blank slate and we're starting all over again. So over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to try to share a few tips on what I have found has been working in evangelism in a post-COVID world, and I hope they also work for you. So tip number one is this. We need to understand that the Western storyline just overnight has been deconstructed. So what is the Western storyline? Well, we're all familiar with the Western storyline. It sort of goes like this. On the day I was born, I was pure as I can be. I was true, I was real, I was authentic. But then authority figures messed me up. My parents messed me up, my teachers messed me up, and religion messed me up. So my mission in life is to be brave, not to listen to what anyone else tells me to do, but to be true to myself and do whatever it takes to be happy. And it's been a great storyline. We have all benefited from this storyline. Because of this storyline, we get to choose the city we want to live in. We don't have to live in the village that mum and dad grew up in. We get to choose the job we want to do. We don't have to do the job that mum and dad did. And we get to choose our romantic partner. We don't have to marry the person that mum and dad want us to marry. It's been an amazing storyline of individualism, of freedom, and of choice and control. But just overnight, COVID has wiped out this storyline. Because now, because of COVID, there is no individualism. We've got social responsibility. Because of COVID, there's no freedom. We've had lockdowns. And because of COVID, there's no choice or control now. There's only uncertainty. Because we can't plan what to do for the rest of 2020. And we can't make any plans for 2021 either. We only have uncertainty. I was recently at a men's conference and they asked all of us just to dial into something like Slido and write just the one word that sums up how we're feeling right now. And they put up all the words on the screen, and the big word in the middle of the screen was uncertainty. That's how almost every person was feeling. And that's the word I typed in, uncertainty. So overnight, the Western storyline has been deconstructed and it's been replaced by uncertainty. So what does that mean for us when it comes to evangelism now in a post-COVID world? Well, the second thing I want to say is this. It means we can explore different emotional entry points. We can explore different emotional entry points. And here I learned a lot from what Tim Keller said in a sermon on Acts 16. And in Acts 16, 3 different sets of people get evangelized. We have Lydia, the business person. We have the slave girl. And we also have the jailer. Lydia, we appeal to reason, and she has a discussion with Paul and Silas, and that's how she becomes a Christian. But the slave girl lives in a world of fear and control. She's under the ownership of her masters. She's literally possessed by a demon, and she has a power encounter with Jesus, and she is set free. The jailer, well, his world crumbles around him, and he has shame because he's failed in his job, and he's so dishonored he wants to take his own life. But then he sees Paul and Silas singing in prison, and he sees in them a way of life that just seems to work. And they have a shalom, a peace that he doesn't have. Now, they're the 3 different emotional entry points to the gospel. Typically in the Western world, this is the way we've been evangelizing. We've been evangelizing people like they're Lydia. We use reason and we use discussions to try to bring them to the gospel. So we have talks, we have sermons, we have dialogues, we have forums, we have question and answer sessions. But now, because of COVID, I think we can also explore these other 2 entry points, because right now there is a lot of fear. There's a fear of the unknown, a fear of the unseen. There's uncertainty. And we can show that with Jesus, we have a Jesus who has power over the unseen, power over the invisible. And also, there's a lot of shame and dishonor right now in our post-COVID world. And we can show with people that there's a way of life and a shalom with Jesus. This also reminds me of what Jason Georges says. And maybe you're familiar with Jason Georges in his 3D gospel. He talks about how there are 3 dimensions to the gospel in the Bible. One dimension is the guilt, innocence dimension of the gospel. We are guilty, we have sinned, but because of Jesus, we can be declared innocent. But the other dimensions are shame and honor, and also fear and power. And again, up until recently, we have been using this dimension of the gospel to evangelize in the Western world. But now, because of COVID, I think we can explore these other 2 dimensions of the gospel. And this explains why the gospel seems to have traction in other parts of the world. I love to joke that if you go to any university campus in Australia, the first thing you notice when you go to a university campus in Australia is this. You go, whoa, there are Asians everywhere. There are more Asians here in this university than Asia. What is going on? And then you go to a Christian group on the university campus and it's only Asians. You will be the only white person in this group. Why? Because the gospel has attraction with Asians in a way it doesn't have with Westerners. And it's because the gospel speaks to fear and power in agents. Agents are afraid of the unknown. Agents are afraid of evil spirits. Agents have all these superstitious rituals, but then in Jesus, they have power over the evil, dark world. And also agents are very shame honor culture, and that's something we can explore as well now that we're post-COVID. Now, what this means for us is this. The jailer saw Paul and Silas in prison singing. They had a way of life that works. Even though the jailer's world was falling down around him, Paul and Silas had shalom. They had peace. And that sort of means for us, I like to say, hey, you know, when we do online church and when isolation lockdown, let's open the windows so that people hear us singing, people hear us worshiping, and they will realize, hey, these Christians, they have a way of life that's working. They have a shalom. It also means that we could explore the shame angle a bit more. There's a writer called David Brooks in the New York Times. David Brooks in the New York Times newspaper. And he said, did you know more people died in the 1918 flu pandemic than World War I or World War II? Yet we always talk about World War I, we always talk about World War II, and we talk about how those wars brought nations together. They united us around a shared common purpose. But we never talk about the 1918 flu pandemic. Why? Because in pandemics, there's a lot of shame. We don't like the people that we became during a pandemic. So that's an emotional entry point that we can really, really explore. You know, I live in Australia, and Australians we're really proud about how tough we are. But apparently during the isolation lockdown, we as a country stored up more on toilet paper per person than any other country in the world. And there's something shameful about that. When we bought our toilet paper, we would come out of shops looking around, hoping that no one would see us. There's something shameful about the way we carry on in a pandemic. We don't like the person we became. You know, during isolation lockdown in Australia, we were only allowed out for 3 reasons. We were only allowed to go outside for exercise. We only allowed to go outside for a haircut. And we only allowed outside to buy alcohol. And that's because the government knew we had to drink because there was so much shame we were trying to numb ourselves to. My chaplain friends say during the isolation lockdown of the pandemic, addictions went sky high. People were addicted to alcohol, gambling, and pornography. There's so much shame about how we carried on during the pandemic. What this also means is we can explore more the power that we can enjoy in God. We can explore more the power that we enjoy in Jesus. Craig Springer, Alpha USA, he's got a new book coming out called How to Revive Evangelism. And he talks about how we need to do both things when we evangelize. One, we need to explain the gospel, but 2, we can actually invite people to have an encounter with Jesus. So often we typically explain the gospel, give them things to understand, and we leave it at that. And there's a place for that. But I think we can also explore asking people, hey, why don't you just pray? Right now, just pray to Jesus and ask that Jesus will make himself real to you. Ask that Jesus will show himself to you. Now, this for us feels very risky, But then this is also risky. We can explain the gospel, but they might choose not to believe. They might not understand. And so that's risky. And this is risky as well. We ask people to pray and ask Jesus to show themselves to this person. But if you think about it, even Lydia, who was reasoned into the gospel, Acts 16 says, the Lord opened her heart to the word of God. So I think there's a place for explanation and also a place for asking people to encounter the power of Jesus. Anyway, so that's a second tip. We can explore different emotional entry points to the gospel. The third tip is this. We now have a better story to tell. Up until now, the Western secular storyline has sounded like the better story, because the Western secular storyline goes like this. It says, I'm okay and you need to accept me for who I am. And this sounds like a great storyline. But Will Storr, who's a UK writer, and he's written a book called Selfie, he says this storyline has led to a higher rate of stress, anxiety, and depression. Why? Like, why would this lead to a high rate of stress, anxiety, and depression? Because this storyline is unsustainable. It leads to a culture of perfectionism and insecurity. So it's not the better storyline at all. So now we can come and give the gospel as the better story. And the better story is this. I'm not okay, and that's okay, because Jesus accepts me for who I am. So it says, I don't have to be perfect because Jesus is perfect. Jesus is perfect, so I don't have to pretend to be perfect anymore. So it allows us to be humble and secure at the same time. Of course, that's only the beginning of the story, because the rest of the story is Jesus accepts me for who I am, but he loves me too much to leave me the way I am. So his spirit lives in me to make me more and more into the person that God needs to be, God needs me to be, and the person that I want to be. See, what COVID has done, it's shown us this. We really only have a choice of two stories in the West. Story number one is the Western secular storyline, and it goes like this. I am just atoms and molecules. I'm just another species of life on this planet. I'm just a blip in the timeline of the universe. Species come, species go. Viruses come, viruses go. This pandemic is just an event that happens in the timeline of the universe, but there is no meaning, there is no purpose. Get over it. That's storyline number one. But storyline number two is this, and it's the better story. There's a God who loves you, who made you, who saves you. He sent his son Jesus to die for you, and Jesus lives for you. And you can be part of Team Jesus, and you can live for Jesus and be part of his mission for this universe, to bring his love, mercy, and justice onto this planet. And now, because of COVID, this does sound like the better story, because what it does is it gives us purpose. They say humans have three very basic needs. Apart from food, shelter, and warmth, our three basic needs are this. We need transcendence, this feeling that there must be something more. We need purpose and hope, and we also need community. See, up until now, what we've done is we've said there is no God. And this has sounded like a great story, because with no God, there's no moral responsibility. Now, the trade-off has been, okay, there's no purpose and there's no hope either. But we told ourselves, you know what, I can create my own purpose, and that's okay. But I say that's like a country saying it can just print its own money, but it doesn't work after a while, because money needs to be linked to an external reference point to have value. And it's the same with us. If we want purpose, we need to be linked to an external reference point, a story bigger than just our own story. Now, because of COVID, suddenly we think, hey, God is the better story, because with God, there's moral responsibility. And that's what COVID's been all about, that we need to practice moral responsibility. We need to wear masks. And because there's a God, there's purpose, and there's also hope. So suddenly we have the better story, because we can offer people transcendence, purpose and hope, and community. I have a friend called Julianne Laird. She does university campus Christian ministry. And I asked her, what's it like doing university campus Christian ministry? And she said to me, oh, it has been amazing. We've had so many people choose to become Christians in the last 2 or 3 years. And I said to her, whoa, really? Were they Asians? Because it doesn't count if they're Asians. And she said, no, these were white people. And I said, oh, so real converts? She said, yeah, okay, real converts. And I said to Julianne, well, what do you think is going on? And she said, it's purpose. University students come to campus with unprecedented freedoms. Suddenly they're free from parents, they're free from teachers, but they don't know what they're free for. They turn up to campuses with no purpose. But now they see in Jesus, in the gospel, there is purpose, there is hope. So that's number 3. Because of COVID, we now have the better story to tell. So how can we tell this story? Well, number 4, I think we now have to do one-to-one evangelism in a way we haven't been doing before. You know, in the last 10 or 20 years, because we're so post-Christian, I think we're moving away from event-based evangelism to personal, conversation-based evangelism. And in an isolation lockdown, I found one good way is just to meet up with people on Zoom, one-to-one, and just ask them, how are you going? And before COVID, whenever we had a conversation, people would only talk about the weather, the weekend, and the sport. But now, because of COVID, because of isolation, there are no weekends because we're working from home. The weather just looks the same, and there isn't much sport to follow now. And so now I feel that it's much easier to have deeper, more meaningful conversations with people. And all I have to do is just ask people, how are you going? And then pause and then say, how are you really going? And I call it the power of the second question, and allows people the permission to talk about what's most true, most real, what's most meaningful to them. And then I simply then say, oh, listen, my wife and my kids, we pray every night for our friends. Would it be all right if we prayed for you? And almost everyone says, oh, that would be wonderful. Please, could you pray for us? And the next time we check up one-to-one, I say, hey, we prayed for you. How are you going? And because we prayed for them, it gives them permission to now talk about spiritual, sacred conversations. And so now we can have sacred, spiritual, one-to-one conversations. Tip number 5, we can offer our friends community. Remember earlier I said that was a basic human need, transcendence, purpose, but also community. And now because of COVID, isolation and lockdowns, it's getting very hard to do community. We try to do communities, we try to do gym online, we try to do cooking clubs online, but none of those things work. But Christian groups work online. The funny thing about Zoom meetings is Zoom meetings are horrible because they're so rigid, they're so formulaic, and you have to take turns speaking. But fortunately, Christian groups work really well because we are formulaic, we are rigid, and we take turns speaking. So what I think is good is if we could invite our non-Christian friends to join a Christian Zoom meeting, and at the start we say things like, hey, this is a Christian group, but it's open to people of all beliefs and faiths, and we ask that everyone just be respectful of people of different beliefs and faiths, and just watch what we do. And suddenly people see that Christians have a community that survives not because of Zoom, but despite Zoom. Because we're united not around an activity, a hobby, or an interest, but somehow we have a deep sense of community because we all have the same spirit of Jesus. And the sixth thing I want to share is this. Now that we're post-COVID, we need to really start thinking more about how we do things digitally. And the earlier person, Samuel, he shared how some things were going really well in the digital online world for him. So what I think COVID has done for us is the equivalent of what the Roman roads have done for us, what the printing press, and what the internet has done. It's revolutionized the way we do communication. So think about all these things. When the Apostle Paul wrote a letter to the Thessalonians, he wrote it to the Thessalonians, yes, but we're reading that same letter now for ourselves 2,000 years later. When Luther writes a sermon to his friends in Germany in the 1500s, he's writing it to his friends in Germany in the 1500s. But yes, we're reading it for us 500 years later. So what this means is this: our audience, our time, and our space is now way bigger than we realized. What's happened is whatever we put online is almost like the Gideon's Bible. Because you know when you go to a hotel and you open the drawer and there's a Gideon's Bible in there, and you think, who reads a Gideon's Bible? Yes, but at 2 in the morning when you're lonely, you might pull out the Gideon's Bible and read it. And it's the same way when we put stuff online and we invite our friends to watch it. Often they don't watch it, but maybe they will one day later, 1 week later, and maybe even 10 years later. So our audience, our time and space is way bigger than it used to be. So maybe we need to start thinking hard about how we do things digitally. And I remember when the internet first came on, we used to put things on web pages, and people used to think all I have to do is get a book and do a one-to-one transfer to a web page, but it didn't work. It was awful. A web page is a different medium from a book. And it could be the same for us. We think that whatever we used to do, we just got to put a camera in front of us and then boom, that can go online. But I don't think so. I don't think it's a one-to-one correlation. So I'll give you one simple example. When we do church, normally before COVID, people would turn up to church usually 5, 10, 15 minutes late. So we used to put all the not so important stuff at the front half of the church service, and then put the main stuff, maybe the preaching, in the back half of the service when everyone had turned up. But now that we're digital, people usually click on and click off within 30 seconds. So we might have to start putting the good stuff right at the front of whatever we put on digitally. Anyway, my time is up. I've got so much more I want to say. I've still got 1 more minute. So let me say this. If you liked what you just got then, there's some things you can do. Number 1, check out bit.ly post-COVID playbook. I'm with City Bible Forum, and a lot of what you just heard today and even more can be found in a post-COVID playbook that we made available in a series of videos and also a PDF that you can download from bit.ly, post-COVID playbook. Now, I've also just put out a book called How to Talk About Jesus Without Being That Guy, and it's only just come out this week with Zondervan. And also, number 3, I put out a book called Evangelism in a Skeptical World about 2 years ago. So if you like what you heard tonight and you want to follow it up even more, these are the 3 best places you can go to. All right, my 30 minutes is up, so I'll hand it back to Michael for Q&A.
Thanks so much, Sam. That's really, really helpful. And just to say that if you want the 3rd of those options, Evangelism in a Skeptical World, 10 of those are doing as a special deal. 27% off, not 25% off, wow. 27% off. You can get that book if you go to 10ofthose.com, and I think the password is FEUER, or the promo code, that's the word. But that's really helpful, Sam. We've got lots of questions that have come through, so we'll fire straight into the questions if that's okay. We'll see what comes up first on the screen in a second. Here we go. Thinking about stories, should we focus on talks that are about the pandemic or carry on with talks on the Western story, but from a pandemic angle? So I guess how much do we explicitly talk about coronavirus in our talks, or how much do we kind of think about how that's affected other things?
I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think we focus very specifically on the pandemic, on the COVID virus. I think it speaks to people where they are, but at the same time, I think it's a message that will date very quickly. So when the pandemic is over in, let's hope, months rather than years, then our message will sound very dated. But I think the emotional entry points will always be there. I think if we can expose to people, hey, what happened in the pandemic, expose to us our fears, our insecurities, and our shame, and maybe push at those entry points. Absolutely.
I found personally, in my experience of speaking at events, in about the first 2 months after the pandemic kind of broke out here in Europe, every talk I was giving had coronavirus in the title. Now people are sick of hearing about coronavirus, but they can't escape the fact that it's forced us to think about these other existential issues. So maybe not using the word, but we can think about the issues that it's raised in our minds, which is so helpful. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
okay, we'll go to the next.
Go on. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, that's really funny, but it was City Bible Forum, my employer. We put this out around March or April, and in Australia, the first curve just flattened very quickly. And we thought, oh, we're dated already. And we were sort of, you can't tell anyone this, we were sort of relieved when the second wave hit. We're like, oh, okay, we're relevant again.
Yeah, and just to say that that website, that resource is really helpful. I downloaded it when I heard you speak a couple of months ago, and read all that stuff, watched the videos. And in fact, the videos were a really good example of how to do online content, because I think they're all less than 5 minutes. So I went on thinking to myself, I haven't got time to watch this now. Watched the first one that was 3 minutes. I thought, I'll just watch the next one. And about an hour and a half later, I've watched them all. So it's a good example of how doing stuff maybe in short sound bites is a way to communicate at this time. Okay, let's have the next question. If the Western viewpoint is experiencing the fear-shame angle, do we use the same fear-shame language, or how would you make it relevant to our cultures?
Yeah, so fear-shame language is saying there's an expected... So the difference between guilt and innocence and fear and honor, shame and honor, the best way of understanding is guilt is where there's a law, but we break the law, so now we need to be declared innocent. Shame is where there's an expected standard that's set either by God, your tribe, your culture, and some way we fell short. And so we have shamed ourselves, we've shamed the tribe. So it's just as objective as guilt, but it's a different sense of objective status. It's a status of shame. And somehow God now comes and restores you and he lifts you up. So it's that Romans language, how we fall short of the glory of God. But God now gives us a status of his children, and he glorifies and honors us. And we see the apostles use it in the book of Acts. So to the church religious people who had the scriptures, they use the guilt, innocence language. They say, you know, God sent you the Messiah, but you killed him. You're guilty. You need to repent. But to the pagans who are unchurched without the scriptures, they use this sort of language. There's a God who sends you rain. He makes your crops grow, but you have not worshipped him. And so I say, when I go to high schools and I speak to kids, often when in Q&A time, they say, well, what is it you Christians believe? I could come in and I'll be biblical, right and true. And I say something like, you know, you've broken one command, you've broken all the commands, you think you're a good person, but you're not, you're a sinner. And what I say is true, but you can feel their eyes rolling because they've heard it 1,000 times before. So what I come in is I use the shame honor language. And I say something like this: there's a God who loves you, who made you, but we don't worship him. We don't honor him. And so that's shame honor language. But to take it even more to where the question is going, our tribes, our culture, so not just God, our tribes, our culture, and even we ourselves have an expected standard. And so in the pandemic, we can use language like, we don't like the person we became in a pandemic. And that's actually shame honor language. Or we're not the person we want to be. And that's shame honor language. But God comes and he makes us the people he needs us to be and we want to be. And that's shame honor language.
Thanks, Sam. That is so helpful, and so helpful to think about how we can connect better when we're trying to talk about this concept of sin in a way that will connect with people well. This one says, thanks, Sam. What kind of context did you have in mind to invite unbelievers into Christian community? Yeah,
and this is revolutionary. And I think even just our small groups. And at first we think, hang on, small groups are for Christians. Like, how can we be open and vulnerable if I know my non-Christian friends are watching in? But I think Paul even says this in 1 Corinthians, you know, the way we run our meetings is we assume the implied audience is there will be some non-believers out there. That's why Paul says, conduct yourselves in this way so that even a non-believer will say, wow, the Lord really is here. So I think even our small groups, we just start having a paradigm shift. And it just takes the person hosting right at the start, say, hey, this group is open to, it is a Christian group, but it's open to people of all faiths and beliefs. And if you're not a Christian yet, just watch what we do. And, you know, we hope for the day when you too might become a Christian. And if we're meeting on Zoom or online, we could actually, I think our non-Christian friends will feel a little bit awkward in the first 1 or 2 meetings. And we could actually ask them, why don't you just mute your camera, mute your microphone, and just watch what we do? And then if we're the friend who invited them, maybe we could have a one-to-one meeting where we debrief afterwards.
That's really helpful. And I think one of the opportunities that the current situation presents us in lots of our countries is where we are able to meet in small groups, but we can't do the big events. And actually, in a small group situation, we can experience community often a lot more than we're in a big event, and we can feel quite isolated or left out. So there is an opportunity to build community in that way. Thanks. Moving on, for a non-Christian friend who is feeling discouraged by the whole pandemic and forced lockdown, any tips on how to come alongside them? Yeah, so the key there is to come alongside. So often we want to monologue or give them advice, but often it's not wanted advice. I think if we give them advice, we're the friend who's coping, but they're not coping. And what they just want to do is to be heard and understood. They say home is where you're understood. And if we can show them we as a Christian understand them, then they would find a home, a belonging with us and our Christian community. And there's all those key things that we get taught, like we need to display 3 levels of what, first of all, my counseling friends say there are 3 types of listening. The first sort of listening is where you just listen, but you're waiting for your turn to talk. So that's not what our friend wants. Second one is where we're listening, waiting for our turn to tell them why they're wrong. So that's not listening. The third one is where we listen, but we're trying to hear, understand, and feel the emotion and affirm the emotion. So as I joke with my friends, guys, it's everything we were taught in marriage counseling before we got married. You need to listen,
understand, and feel. So when your wife says you're not doing the dishes, you just need to repeat her words back to her. From what I hear you saying, I'm not doing the dishes. And then you have to show you've understood. You summarize her words into your words to make sure you're not just parroting your words back at her. Oh, I understand that means I'm not doing my share of the housework. And then you got to say, oh, that must make you feel. And you just got to guess an emotion, but it's always going to be anger. Oh, that must make you feel so angry. Have I heard you correctly? And your wife go, yes, you've heard me correctly. And my wife caught me giving that advice to my guy friends, and she said, oh, if I ever catch you doing that to me, I'll be, and I said, oh, from what I hear you saying, but that's really what our friend who's discouraged during the pandemic wants. We just need to be someone that they can talk to and they feel understood. We affirm their emotions, we affirm their fears.
That's very helpful. That's very helpful. From what I hear you're saying, no. Great. I think we have one more. I think this is more of a statement than a question, but this is from Sarah in Italy. The FEUER team has been doing an outstanding job inspiring us for evangelism and bringing voices from all over Europe. I think we can add, and Australia. Thank you. God goes before us, Sarah. Thanks for your encouragement, Sarah. And thanks so much, Sam, for taking time to join us today. That's been really helpful. And those resources, I think, will be really helpful going on from here as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, we've come to the end of our morning together, and I hope you'll agree it's been a really helpful and rich morning of hearing how the gospel can be presented in a sample talk. We've heard inspiring reports. We've heard some really useful and practical advice there from Sam, particularly for our current context. So that's it for this morning. But just to remind you, we have our seminars again this afternoon. That's at 5:30 Central European Time. So just come back to this part of the website. You'll find all the links that you need there. Click on the links, it will take you through to the Zoom room, and the seminars will be there. A lot of people have been asking about whether stuff has been recorded. Everything is being recorded, and as soon as it's been edited, we'll be putting it up online. So we will send you the links to that or make them available as soon as we have them up online, so you can enjoy this stuff again and catch up on anything that you might have missed. And then this evening, at 7:30 Central European Time, we've got a really exciting evening. We've got Ajit Fernando joining us from Sri Lanka. Andy is going to be leading us tonight, and we've got loads of contributors doing all sorts of creative stuff from around Europe. So you won't want to miss out tonight at 7:30. So join us for that. But thank you so much. Don't forget your small groups, hopefully starting in about half an hour. Enjoy them, and we'll see you later.